Like, build yourself really long goals that you're ready to commit to, and then get stakeholders to buy into that. Make sure that your company, your community believes in your agenda. And then, if you need a company like Cyberlite to come up with the resources that you don't have, seek them from outside or find them within your own community. There's a lot we can be doing in these pillars if we all work together to do it. And so, that's my takeaway, really.
We're recording this in June, which is Pride Month, and we've seen a lot of people and a lot of companies post about Pride Month. And it's really, one thing to tell the world that you support something, but it's another thing to reflect on your own actions and your policies and making sure that they're aligned and you're not just doing it for someone else to look at or to get the kudos from the community.
Melting Pot, a global podcast series hosted by Bual, connects guests who have inspiring stories and reaches out to a multicultural audience over 52 countries. Guests are diverse, such as celebrities, entrepreneurs, travelers, and many more who've had a turning point in their lives and moved over to a holistic lifestyle. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, social media. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So today I'm talking to Michelle Yao and Nina Bual, and both are co-founders of a social impact agency in Singapore, and it's called Cyberlite Books. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here with you today.
Great. So let's kickstart the conversation with just a little background on both of you. I'm not sure if both of you are originally from Singapore or, like so many of us, Singapore has kind of become home. And also, how did the two of you get to actually come together and start Cyberlite Books?
So I'll give you an idea of how I started and how we met. As you can hear maybe from my accent, I am from the UK. I was born and bred there, and at the age of 28, picked up my bags and moved to India with a one-way ticket. Probably in search of the motherland, but by this time nobody was left in the motherland from my family. But I was really aware that I wanted to understand Asia and India more. So I moved there when I was 28 and started my entrepreneurship journey there. I started actually in the spa industry, which is a far cry from cybersecurity and social impact. But that's where I started and had a small chain of spas, and then moved on to having a nail polish brand called Jumkey, which retailed across India. I sold that, and it was acquired in 2015, which sort of serendipity. My husband was offered a job here in Singapore, and that's what brought me to Singapore. And like everyone, after a long entrepreneurial journey, I decided that was it, that I didn't want to do it again, and I'd get myself a proper job. As I've always deemed them to be. And actually within about 6 months of arriving here, I realized I didn't want a proper job and I would like to go back into entrepreneurship, and went into cybersecurity and was working really in the awareness sector in cybersecurity. And there's a long story, obviously.
I'm going to interrupt you there. So why cybersecurity? I mean, what is it about cybersecurity that kind of, drew your attention to it?
Yeah, it was an accident, like most things. So my husband was in cyber, and while I was looking for a new venture, he sort of said, look, your skill set is very good in training, in breaking down complex information and using creativity. And so and also a lot of people in cyber are technical. So being able to communicate to the public or to the masses about cyber risk. And 6 years ago, we were still not talking about cyber risk as we're doing today. Netflix has made it slightly easier for people to understand with, a lot of scams and stories coming out. But back then, people weren't having that conversation. So I got myself embedded into the awareness side, really with the guidance of my husband, who said, look, you'd be good at this. And then I got the bug. And I think it's it's a career that people don't really think about, cybersecurity, because it sounds like a hacker in a back room. But there's so much more to it than that. I started this journey and then joined a venture studio, really as a pause or a break of understanding what I wanted to do with my journey. And that's where I met Michelle.
Yeah, so like Nina, my start was never in cybersecurity at all. So I am Singaporean, but I grew up in Jakarta most of my life. And I went to London for university, where I studied footwear design, actually. So far cry from cyber, both of us.
So one
response to footwear.
to footwear. Interesting, yeah.
So I moved back after uni to work in fashion, and that was always something that I wanted to do. And after a couple of years, I came out and did my own thing and really kind of went down the entrepreneurial journey, where I wanted to build something from scratch and to, you know, be my own boss, essentially. And that's when I went into this venture studio where I met Nina a couple of years ago now. And at that studio, we found a lot of commonalities together, and we found that we worked really well together, and our vision and our creative styles were really enmeshed from day one. We really just really knew how to communicate and work with each other, which I think both of us realized how rare that is, especially when you're working together and you become friends. Sometimes it doesn't really work out when you have, creative differences, but we really kind of were able to work through a lot of things together and really quickly. And it's when she started, brainwashing me in a sense about how kind of intense and expansive the cyber awareness world was. And I came from a generation where I was kind of let loose on the internet at high school age, when we all first got our first laptops. And that's when things started becoming like Facebook started becoming a thing when I was in high school, and started the start of social media with MySpace as well. And a lot of the issues that I was facing as a teenager were the same and even amplified with the teenagers today. And then that got me really kind of passionate about this subject, where I said, how is this still the same thing 15 years on? How are we still talking about stranger danger? Why aren't more people, putting boundaries in place to safeguard these teenagers and not let them fall into such vulnerable positions? So that's how we started Cyberlite, and we really kind of went all in on the cyber awareness sector last year when we first started. And that's when we decided to publish our first book, Ready, Get, Set, Connect, which is a cyber safety workbook for kids that we work with the Ministry of Education and IMDA in Singapore on.
So a little more detail on Cyberlite book.
When we started, and that's where we started our journey together, but there are fundamental things that we believe require social impact, and cyber safety is one of them. And the other one that we're incredibly passionate about is DEI for the APAC sector. And so
for people who don't know what DEI is,
that's diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation that has been led from the West and has come here through a lot of corporations and policies, but fundamentally hasn't had a public conversation of what is expected from me in diversity and equity and inclusion in a workplace and with my children and my family, and do I have the language to talk about it? So with the success of the first book, our second book was written for families within the DEI sector, and that was the second place that we landed. And then we have another sector that we have launched as well this year, sustainability. Again, we are aware as individuals that social impact is required in this space, and that we need to be having conversation, and corporates are also thirsty to talk to local communities. And what we wanted to do was provide them resources and tools which corporates can get involved in, and offer the local communities the ability to start that space. And there is one other pillar that we're excited and very interested in, and again, very, very driven by our own ambition, is entrepreneurship. And how can you teach those girls to enforce innovation in these categories as well. So a lot of what we do, and where one of your questions really is, look at everything with an entrepreneur brain and say, right, we want to make an impact in the space. How do we do it? And how do we validate we're successful? And how do we measure that success? And so that's how the real growth of the social impact agency has happened.
These are the topics that we feel are really important to our just modern day conversation, whether it's in the workplace, you can see it on LinkedIn, in the boardrooms, but you can also start hearing these conversations happen in the classroom, and the kids starting to bring that back to the dinner table as well. So it's infiltrating all parts of our lives, and it's not something that you can just say diversity and inclusion, save that for the workplace, or just save sustainability for the children to recycle something. We have to get involved in it. And our main mission as a company is to educate people on these issues, and we do it in a creative way that we really pride ourselves on, because we don't believe that simply dumping a load of information onto people as a good way of teaching them about these particular social issues. So we do it through our workbooks. So back to your first question about, why books? Our books are designed in a really illustrative manner where we introduce lots of characters and puzzles and games in it. It's not just a textbook. We call it an interactive workbook where children can really get absorbed into the information and learn through a number of different ways. So and we design it for neurodiverse people in mind as well. So the texts are broken up into different chunks, and it's not so hard to absorb. But we also run student workshops, we run parent webinars, we run teacher workshops alongside these materials that we give out. We're also currently developing a whole suite of things, from games to online learning systems to interactive events that we do run with corporate clients and schools, and everyone who will listen to us really.
Okay.
The impact is about reaching different sorts of communities and educating them on these various social issues.
That's interesting. So how far have you gone? I mean, if you could just under each sector, if you could identify just one impact that you felt has made a difference within communities or within the corporate world, it would be interesting so that it's more tangible.
Yeah, we can definitely share some case studies. So that helps.
So the first one is the one we're very proud of, that we have the opportunity to go to every Singapore school with the book. We've been cleared by the Ministry of Education, and we get a lot of support from the IMDA, which has allowed us to reach over 20 to 25,000 children already today with our workshops. So we've done a lot of talking with children, parents, and the teachers, and our books have been delivered to the children, one individually to each. So that amount of impact has been incredibly big. We're also working with a lot of the international schools here in Singapore, where their diversity plays out in the playground and the classroom because of such a diverse set of moral values, of cultures and religion, and really coming up to date with how do we have a conversation with all stakeholders, parents, teachers, principals, the board. So we have had a lot of success and validation in that sector as well. The one I'm most proud about, because I've been in cyber for a while, is we have also been we've been accepted as a member of the GFCE, which is fundamentally a foundation that works with implementing cyber safety, cyber expertise across the world, which allows us to speak to ministers and to stakeholders and policymakers at a high level, and to build resources to make sure that we communicate there. So these are some of the things that I am excited that we've achieved in our short period of time.
I mean, to what you were saying, I mean, I've been quite proud of us as well, and kind of astonished at the number of even corporations who are willing to talk to us about these issues. Because when we first set out to start a social impact agency, no one no one really knew what we were talking about, or no one really kind of got it. But, you know, the more we worked at it, the more people really felt that need of educating their workforce, to educating their families about these issues. So I've been really kind of honored to be working with, we worked with the Michelle Obama schools in California last year, as well as big names like Twitter and Food Panda and Palo Alto Networks, which if you're in the cybersecurity industry, you know that they're a massive kind of leader, global leader around the world. And to get such big names supporting the work that we're doing as well has just been absolutely incredible. And we have quite a number of projects that are coming out that we're really excited to announce in the near future, which should be quite impactful, I think, for the world.
I think just one of the things that when me and Michelle sat down and saw our books translated into so many different languages within a short amount of time, because this impact is not only in Singapore. So to see your book be printed in different languages, and then with each book, we offer a workshop. So then seeing these children's faces interact with the book and get excited. I don't think a lot of authors get to do that, to see that you've made a substantial difference in a child's life. And that's what it's about. You know, we really are really passionate about the impact that we are making. And I think that's attributed to our fast growth in the sector.
So which countries outside of Singapore have you actually been able to connect with, and where you have seen, you know, the influence from what kind of work you're doing?
So in the region in Southeast Asia, our work has been translated, and this is a sponsored translation. So there's definitely a real need for it into Bahasa Indonesia, Vietnamese, and Thai. But of course, we also work with the English-speaking regions like Australia, India, UK, and US.
You obviously have content developers on board, right? To help you with, you know, underreach sort of sector, to help you develop the books. And so that must be quite interesting as well, to try and, you know, have these content developers work along with you so that they are able to follow, you know, the mission and the vision that you have for Cyberlite books.
The secret sauce really is we really think with an entrepreneurship brain. So everything has to be in some sort of framework that needs validation. And so when we're doing something, it's not accidental, it's really curated and thought out, so it can be handed to somebody with a tone and a feel. And I would say Michelle is head of innovation, which is a made-up title, but because she's so good at innovating and getting that across. So I'll hand you over to Michelle, because the way she gets the people we work with to get what we're doing very quickly, because when you're a startup as well, you don't have weeks to waste. Like, you need to get the product right and get it out there. So Michelle, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we work is very lean. So like Nina kind of has mentioned about the entrepreneurial way, we really cut the fat around a lot of the things that maybe if you've experienced in a big company, there is quite a bit of, where we say, okay, what do we need and how can we get that done really quickly? And because we have expanded to so many different subjects and social issues as well, we have developed quite a strong network for ourselves of key opinion leaders and kind of these experts within the industry who we have partnered with or networked with within our periphery that we can rely on for help. So for example, in the UK, we work really closely with a diversity and inclusion person who has experience in Europe and in Asia as well. We have someone who is an autistic advocate. So he's a speaker that really speaks on autism in the workplace, and that's who we kind of fall into when we want to talk about neurodiversity. So we have people like this all over the world. So because me and Nina know that we can't be experts in everything, so we need to lend for these like brain powers around to really increase our own knowledge bank. And I think that's something that we found working with people within social impact is very different from being in a corporate setting where people are more close guarded about their know-how. I think people who are really passionate about social issues and doing it for the right reasons are usually very happy to share with you, you know, these are my experiences, this is what I know, this is kind of how we can help each other out. So that's been a really nice kind of thing to discover about this community.
I think every culture, you know, the sort of sensitivities are very different, right? So you have to also ensure that, you know, you're not your message is getting communicated, but at the same time, you're not disturbing or, you know, causing any kind of ripples because of that. So that, especially with I would say diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think there, you know, the sensitivities would be a lot more depending on the culture. I mean, cyberspace is something which, you know, everyone. Do you think it's something that's very universal in terms of, you know, what really can go wrong? Is not very specific to a particular country, right?
Yes and no. So what can present itself can be very different at different levels. So what a child in India in an urban area and the cyber risks they may face may be very different to what a child in an international school may face. So the cyber crime may not be the same, and therefore, you know, policies and how you deal with that situation can be different. Of course, there are commonalities that we teach or the tools that we put into play. But I think one of the mistakes that when we look at cyber is to think tools and solutions that are sold in the West will replicate themselves easily here. So if you're talking to someone about grooming in a country where there's such a difference in gender disparity anyway, you know, trying to convince a family that a boy can be groomed as much as a girl can be groomed is still a lot more complex. You know, a lot of cyber crimes that happen to children in international school may be done by their peers who are a hacker or know that, you know, that the easy infiltration is in their classroom. So there are some extreme differences in that respect. Even being a victim, are you as likely to say you are a victim of an online relationship scam in Asia as if you were in the West? So it's also how the culture deals with the crime in itself. And again, you're really right in the DEI space. And when we wrote the DEI book, it was complex. You know, if you can see us on the screen, I am Indian presenting and Michelle is Asian presenting. And, you know, we're talking about being minorities while sitting in the side of the world where we are the majority. So, you know, how do we reframe that conversation so this DEI conversation belongs to us?
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, Nina and Michelle. Any last kind of comments that you would like to share with the listeners in terms of, you know, in terms of the kind of awareness that Cyberlite Books has been able to create? And, you know, what are some of the pointers that people should be aware of?
I think in terms of takeaways really is it's important to look at the social impact space. You know, if I'm talking to a corporation or I'm talking to a community that you would like to adopt and you'd like to see change in, and make measurable goals to see a difference. Don't just throw something at it and say, oh, we want to look at food waste and we'll all go and help one day in the community. Like, build yourself really long goals that you're ready to commit to, and, you know, and then get stakeholders to buy into that. Make sure that your company, your community believes in your agenda. And then, you know, if you need a company like Cyberlite to come up with the resources that you don't have, seek them from outside or find them within your own community. There's a lot we can be doing in these pillars if we all work together to do it. And so, you know, that's my takeaway really.
We're recording this in June, which is Pride Month, and we've seen a lot of people and a lot of companies post about Pride Month. And it's really, one thing to tell the world that you support something, but it's another thing to reflect on your own actions and your policies and making sure that they're aligned and you're not just doing it for someone else to look at or to get the kudos from the community.
Great. On that note, thank you once again, both of you. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope both of you as well.
Absolutely. It's been enjoyable. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care and good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
For more weekly conversations, do listen to Melting Pot on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts. Follow us on YouTube and on Instagram at Podcast Melting Pot. So until the next episode, this is Payal signing off.